It's 5:01.
We are live.
Oh, good morning, everyone. Welcome to, it's 5 o'clock, December 15th. Welcome to Technology, Finance, and Operations Subcommittee meeting for the Wilbraham Regional School District. Let's take attendance. Michelle, are you here?
Here.
Okay. Sean?
Here.
And I am also here. We're also joined by Todd, and hopefully Hamden Advisory is on their way still. All right, can we say that? Sean, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Doug, you've got a presentation for us on the budget?
I do have some things for you.
I certainly don't want to be the one to say this first.
So let's start with, we'll leave that.
And do you have a paper form that we can pass around the table?
Well, I did.
Oh,
John.
oh, it's going up there? Okay.
It's going to be both. Do you want to start with capital or?
Let's start with operating.
We can
Okay,
start with
operating.
capital. You want to start with operating?
We can do either
Here
one.
comes operating.
I have-
Here comes operating. Okay. Is it okay if I sit here? I can see what everybody else is seeing. Okay. And I'm also not right in front of the camera. I know why you take your seat.
The wise people, use their seats
If
wisely.
I don't pass them around, I think it's super cool.
You got one, right?
Pass those ones. Like,
Oh,
they're sort of stagger printed, so there's like four
nothing's to
pages.
grab?
Yeah, there's like,
So is this one for each, or this is all the same?
no, that's one set.
Okay.
Oh, so
So
just
there's-
keep the whole thing together?
Well,
Okay. I only get one.
The
I
second
only-
thing's coming around. That's
That's-
operating. Here comes capital.
Right.
Operating's a single sheet. Capital's a group of 4, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
2 sheets, 4 sides.
I think these are both the same, aren't they? No, they're different. Okay.
Should have had a little crimp
Oh,
on the corner.
the print pattern always worked for you.
It's two-sided. Okay.
So Patrick Kieran is on YouTube. On
Oh,
the
good. The live stream, great.
Oh, excellent. Welcome, Patrick.
Do I need to send pictures of these to him, or can he see them?
Or you should be
Doug
able
will
to
be,
see it.
Doug will be able to
I'll zoom it,
zoom in.
I'll zoom on the
The-
screen.
Just so, you know, Patrick, our YouTube is one way, so if you want to
Yeah.
be involved, you can call in. We can put you on the phone.
Yeah, Pat, you could just call me or Todd if you have a comment. I'm sure you'll have a comment.
Okay.
So, one of the things a little different that I did this year, just to orient you to what we're looking at here a little bit, is I added actuals from the last 5 years. And so, when I put the bigger budget book together in a little bit, I'll show that and be able to sort of demonstrate some trends a little bit over time. And hopefully that'll help paint the picture of what's happened over the last few years as we move forward from one year to the next. So in looking at this, there's a couple things in doing that I want to make sure to point out to folks. One is, those are actuals. If you look at the column G, which is budget offsets, budget with offsets applied. So this column is the one that, it's right in the middle of the chart, is what's actually in our accounting software, because we've taken our general fund, subtracted out the offsets that are supporting our budget in some other ways. These are the general fund amounts that are in there. The column to the right of that, where it says fiscal 2026 budget before offsets applied, that was the sort of amounts that are from the true expenses that we experience in each of the different sections of the budget. So what you can see, for example, one of the significant differences, if you look at student services, it's $5.3 million without the offsets, it's $3.4 million with the offsets, so there's a significant number of things, either grant funding, circuit breaker funds, those types of things that provide quite a bit of support to that area of the budget. Likewise for the district-wide support, district-wide carries all of our insurances, which is where we apply our school choice funds. We tend to have that support our insurance line. So that differential is pretty significant as well between what we have for cost versus what we charge to the general fund. The next column to the right, where it says budget estimate 2015 or 12/15/2025, is what we're currently estimating for our costs for the coming year. I will preface all of this with a lot of caution. There's a lot of estimating in this. There's a lot of things to be refined, a lot of unknowns, and I'll talk through those a little bit as we go through. But as you go down that column, what you'll notice is that the overall increase in just sort of raw expenses for the district, we're looking at 7.44% increase. So that's pretty significant. We thought, well, we've got unsettled contracts, maybe we should do kind of a range. What would happen if it was, sort of more favorable sort of circumstances over some of our expenses, and sort of what happens if things turn out a little differently and sort of more challenged experience with a higher estimate. So those two columns to the far right there are sort of a low end and a higher end estimate of what we think is likely to happen relative to our budget. And again, I think that all of this is to be taken with a lot of caution, just because I think this will change significantly over the coming couple of months. Hopefully, we've estimated conservatively in most of these things, so that hopefully all of this will move in a direction that's positive. But nonetheless, we think it's a decent place to start. And so you see that range of 6.72. That's going to be if insurance breaks in a really positive way, and a few other things, how we settle our contracts, that sort of thing, as much as 7.66 on the high end. So pretty significant increases in cost there. This next section, we talk about sort of what our offsets are, so things that support our budget that are not considered revenue by the state. So these are the standard things we have in there: school choice, circuit breaker, our grant from METCO, early childhood grant, a little bit of support from our food services department to help us out in a few areas that are in our regular budget that they can support, some of their maintenance type work, that sort of thing. The IDEA grant, which is holding hopefully steady this coming year, just a little bit down. That's a little more where we are in the current year, the 875 as far as available for next year. Title I, Title IIA grants. Fortunate thing there, we had a significant drop, if you remember from last year's budget, a significant drop in our funding from Title I. It kind of rebounded this year, so we're going to hope that holds steady in the coming year, and so that's a nice boost in support for our budget that takes a little bit of burden off our towns. Title IIA is going to hold pretty steady, we think. We've got some resources in our facilities revolving. That's, when we read this, our facilities for use by different organizations, we have some resource there. We'll apply a little bit more of that to support our budget, buy some of our floor wax and paper goods and things like that a little more this coming year. Likewise, our early childhood revolving, we charge tuition for our preschool program, so again, that balance is in good shape, and so we can offer a bit more of that to support our staff in that work and cover more of our salaries with regard to our costs in providing that pre-K program. And so what we have in total there is that our offsets for the coming year are up a little bit from last year, which is a good thing. That helps us to reduce the increases to the towns as far as what we're looking for assessment. And so what you see in that sort of middle section, 57, 289, 029, that's right in there with the current year budget. Taking the sort of middle of the road approach, the projected with offsets is going to be $61,703,797. It's about a 7.71% increase. And then we often will have a separate sheet that we've had called colored sheet, but we sort of stuck it on one here for the purposes of today's conversation about some of the support that we have from some of our what are considered revenues by the state. So we have our transportation reimbursement. So the number of 1.7 is what we'll be collecting this year from them based on last year's expenses, which is why it hasn't, although we reduced our transportation costs in the current year, there's a lagging reimbursement, so that's why that number is what that is, which is a little bit of an improvement over the current year. Medicaid, I think, last year we had $290,000. I think that's pretty optimistic. I think 250 is more on par with what we get from year to year. What that is when we provide services that are Medicaid eligible, we file with the feds and get reimbursed for those services we provide. So sometimes OT, PT, that kind of work. I think 250 is a much more modest and reasonable amount that we will likely gain in revenue from them. Interest revenue, we've held it low for the last few years. I think that's not representative of what we've actually earned in interest over the last couple of years. So to bump that up to 250, which is still a conservative number, with the Fed's lowering interest rates, it'll probably moderate a little bit, but I think we're still okay with that number as an estimate.
Estimating it low, does that mean it flows to free cash?
Yeah, the difference would be E&D in our case, but yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So yes, so that's one of those things that has in the last couple of years when we've had much more significant interest revenue, it's become E&D. It's played into our E&D numbers for sure. So I think the feeling is that tuning that to a number more reflective of what we actually earn is better. I mean, we still want to be conservative and have a little, cushion there for that extra revenue that helps us out. So that's I'm estimating at $250,000, which is a pretty significant bump up from last year's estimate. But I think it more honestly reflects some of what we're going to have for income in that regard. Next line down is the E&D. So we certified a little over 1.2 million in E&D, or excess and deficiency. This budget is presenting with $700,000 of E&D support. There's about $500,000 for those unexpected things that might arise. That would require a whole set of steps that, but it is sort of cash on hand that's available to be used if the school committee votes to modify the budget and notification of the towns, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other significant change here is the next line down, which is Chapter 70. So what I realized in going back through this year is that we have been sort of taking the budgeted amount and adding in the increase, but not really resetting the base to what was actually appropriated by the state. And so while the increase in our Chapter 78 from the current year to next year is not really going to be $485,000. It's going to be some number times the number of students we have. It is a big jump from how we projected it in the past. So I think that more accurately reflects where we're at. So this year's Chapter 70 is about a little over 13 million. I'm estimating $100 a student, because we're in that hold harmless category. So I'm estimating about $100 a student. Governor has traditionally come out with the budget, at least last year, was $75. That's been pretty typical over the last couple of years for the governor's budget. The legislature has, over the last couple of years, bumped that number up. In the current year, it's $150 per student added to the base from the previous year. I don't want to go quite that far just yet. I think we'll see how things play out a little bit. But 100 is a kind of a middle ground there. So that's part of that increase from one year to next. But the bigger chunk of that is just setting the base before we add that 100 per student in such a way that it's a little more reflective of the actual receipts. And again, that's another one that would play.
If it was 150, would the 13 become 14?
No, so it's,
It would, oh, no, that's what I'm just,
let's see,
Being
there's
down
2,700, 2,800 students, so, you know,
130,000.
yeah, about 130,000 there. Which, you know, we'll see. I mean, it's one of those things where, I will say about this, is that, you know, there have been years where the legislature has, you know, come to an agreement, both the House and the Senate, to fund, you know, to set a value for local funding, which includes Chapter 70, and they sort of make that commitment early in the process. They've done it as early as March. They haven't in the last several years. I would love it if they did it, because that allows us to sort of more firmly set that number and not have a big, you know, gap between, you know, what we guess and what it really ends up being. But again, that differential ends up flowing into our excess and deficiency. So, you know, again, the governor comes out and says 150, that number's gonna get changed. It won't, you know, it generally is never less than what the governor puts out. It sometimes does go up, but you know, that the law is set, you know, explicitly $30 per student is the full harmless number. They have not funded at that level for probably, I don't know, 8 or 10 years. So hopefully that's a, you know, reasonable starting place for an estimate. Again, these are part of the things that get refined over time as we go through. I'm going to skip down on this a little bit to some of the assumptions. I've talked about this a little bit. I talked about the Chapter 70, talked about the entitlement grants, but the health insurance is what I want to talk about in particular. You know, trends nationwide are pretty driven by inflation, and both the services that are being provided are going up at a pretty significant increase. Drug costs are going up at a pretty big increase. Last year we went up, or I mean for the current year we went up 4% over the previous year. That was partly because the trust that we're a part of was in good shape and had money on hand. Basically, they have a target amount of, you know, money in the bank that they want to hold to sort of, you know, manage their business, and they're well above that. And so, you know, 2 years ago in fiscal '25, they went to 0. For the current year, we went up 4%. I don't know, given the performance, you know, part of that was to spin down some of that money that, you know, the members who are participating have paid into it and leverage it for the purpose, which was to provide their health insurance and their health coverage. You know, to date, the sort of claims versus premiums collected are trending in a way that's reducing their overall balance, but maybe more than was anticipated. So we may not be able to have that kind of support from the trust as we did this year. So I'm anticipating a pretty significant increase in our health insurance. Right now I'm estimating about 13%. You know, as I note there, a percentage point is roughly $68,000. So if it goes down, and I'm hoping it does, and we'll know more. We'll set insurance rates, I think we'll set the insurance rates very early, like the 2nd of February, or something like that. So I'll still have this sort of baked into our budget when I first present the full thing in all its gory detail to the school committee. It'll probably still be sitting with that estimate for our first round, but then very early in February, we'll adjust accordingly. Hopefully, you know, I guess on the high side, and that it, you know, what I'd love for it to come in at is like 8%, but we'll see whether that's what happens or doesn't happen.
So can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So you're saying Your estimate right now with 13% is an $884,000 increase in insurance costs for the district.
Yeah, that's about right.
Okay. Thank you.
So it's, it's a big chunk of what we do. I mean, and and we talked about this earlier today, but I didn't get it onto the sheet, which was, when we look at other municipal departments, that's a piece that sits in a separate one. So it's not always included in the, or at least I don't think it is, in the municipal budgets. When you look at police or fire or DPW, they often don't have their insurance costs there. That adds to the pressure on us to, and the increase in our overall budget, differently than it is for the departments, and I was gonna kind of tease out what that difference was, but if it's $800,000, then our, overall increase is, 4.4, then it goes down to, doing that quickly, 3.6, which is, much more modest increase, but still a pretty hefty increase in our budget at this point. Trying to think
It's
there's
less
other
than you
things.
were last year this month.
What's that?
It's less than you were last year this month.
As far as percentage increase,
No dollars, no 2%.
He's giving you a compliment.
It's a compliment.
Just take it.
doing what we can, and I think there'll be,
Good.
I'll
It
be
is.
honest.
Well, I mean, this time of the year,
No,
we don't know a lot, right? So,
Yeah, there's a lot of unknowns, there's a lot of things that I have currently where they're at the same level as the current year, and part of the reason for putting a 5-year history is to see if we're really using the resources in some of those budget lines, and there's some that have been underfunded, and we need to bump them up a little bit. There's some that have been overfunded, they need to be lowered. There's some shifting, just because, there's difference of opinion about how you should count for some things, but I think, we'll continue to sort of work through that. A lot of those aren't gonna move this in big directions, but a little bit here and there, but, if I can find, slack in the system, we can tighten it up, I will, because there's, I'm guessing that, 7% increases is really what you're looking for.
You're in a 2.5 override situation right now, but
Right.
it's not worth, it's worth going over the numbers, it's not worth talking about what it's gonna happen to it. If this number was 6, and we know that maybe we can get down to 3, we know where, then we need to start talking to the community about a 2.5 override and getting that popular opinion out right now.
Yeah,
But this isn't that to me right now.
yeah,
We can only raise taxes by 1.7, so
Right.
and last year you got 1.7 because what you did with your Chapter 70 monies and your interest monies, they did that at Town Hall, and they redid their excise tax number, they redid their interest number, they redid all of those numbers in order to get that number, because our budget increased over like I think it was 2 to 1, but it was through new business and through
Right.
running down. It was putting $450,000 from, which always flowed to free cash. It was putting that out of the free cash number and putting it into the budget. It was
Right.
stuff like that we were able to get the increase that we got.
right,
So, like you just did, it's a one-time bump to it was a one-time bump. We don't see I don't see our free cash being the 4.2 that it was this year, again. It's not, and I'm glad for it. Having a 4.2 free cash number is a good problem, but it's a problem, because that means you've collected too much.
yeah. I think the thing I think about with regard to putting a budget together is you want to be when you're sort of trying to convince the town to vote for it, what those numbers represent needs to be as accurate as you can be. Obviously, planning some level of contingency in certain areas more than others, but you do want to be if you're consistently overestimating the cost in a sort of egregious way, then they stop believing what you're telling them, and they're like, I'm not gonna fund that. So it's, we're trying to, as best we can, target these numbers in ways that best represent what we really are, what we're needing and what we're also spending our money on. So we're making sure it's in the right place, so that, like, if you see X dollars in this line, we're really spending it on that thing that it says it is, and not sort of sitting on that and using it somewhere else. That's not.
So a little caveat also is that that history that you gave me in the E&D, if you bump that against, right directly against where the increases were for the year, your E&D was higher than the increases from the towns on every year for 10 years except for two.
Mhm.
And one of them was an outlier because it was COVID, so it was just an outlier. But so, for myself, tweaking those numbers to make sure that not that your ED, that the budget line numbers are correct, helps that number out, because then you won't need as much to flow to E&D,
Right,
right? Because if you're asking for 1.4 million and your E&D comes out 1.5, you really didn't need 1.4.
right.
I'd rather see you say 1 million and 1 million, you know what I mean? I'd
Right,
rather see it,
right.
I think that's the right method.
Yeah.
Because that's what the numbers came out, and they were like, that was a little bit glaring, like, okay, how can we fix to get the E&D number more in line? Not that you don't need E&D, everybody needs E&D, we need free cash.
Right.
It helps everything out for emergencies, but we need to get our free cash in line so we can put more into the budget.
Right.
Same kind of situation.
Right, right, and I think that, you know, we wanna have, wanna sort of tune that so that you have the flexibility you need. You know, this is true with your free cash or E&D, you wanna have that at a level and then utilize it, you know, at a level that sort of holds you fairly steady. So you can accommodate an unexpected expense if necessary, but at the same time, you then turn around and utilize it to support your budget in a way that it's consistent. There's just there's just so many unknowns when you sort of put it together and sign the budget. Then it's a year's worth of working within that. But I think we're trying to have that be a moderating tool, but not.
To emphasize what you're saying, if we have 4.2 or 4.3, whatever it ended up being, and you have one, that means collectively, we've raised $6 million more than what was needed.
Right.
Again, I'm not saying you need an E&D of 0, and we don't need a free cash of 0, but that's $6 million is 10% of your budget.
Right, and that's I would agree, that's too big a number, right?
It just is. I mean, so our goal, I think the accountant's guidelines is 3 to 4%, which is, we're at 6 or 7, so yes, we needed to tweak it.
Yeah. No, I fully appreciate that, and that's, I think, the same sort of.
It'll hurt capital. It'll hurt capital.
Well, I think that.
But in a way, that's okay, because that means capital needs to get approval from the town, and not just get capital through.
Yeah.
But, okay.
So.
But E&D drifting down, I think, is okay, but it's gotta be slowly over time, right? Because, like last year, we contributed almost 1.2 of E&D to the assessments, right? And so this year, we're doing 700, right, so less, hypothetically 700, but that's the proposal right now, right? So that's less, right? But that's already, that's 500 less money in the assessment, right, than we had last year from E&D.
Right.
So,
And then you tweak it, it's 500 less there, but it's 150 in interest, and it's 100 and something from chapter 71, so it's still the same, it's the pie, right? But, okay.
Yeah, and I just want to mention a couple of other large sources of variance. Doug already touched on insurance, which is big. It's almost $900,000, one way or another.
Is the total 6.8 million, I assume, if it's 1%, is 68,000?
Yeah.
Why isn't it a line item?
It is within the district and central office line. So it's within that, but I don't pull it out distinctly.
When you go to the line item budget, it is there. Actually, it's like 5 lines
Yeah,
there.
well, that's the thing, it's a bunch of, but
All
there's two that are
of
primarily
which are
health
included
insurance
in the
lines.
district-wide support. So when you see district-wide support going up 5.22, a lot of that is because of the insurance.
Right.
Other unknowns, of course, are contract negotiations with Unit A and Unit C, which are a large part of our personnel costs. So we don't know where that's going to end up. Part of the reason why we've given a range rather than just a number at this point. And then the other big thing is our assessment from the LPDEC. We have a meeting tomorrow morning where we're gonna see the first view of their budget, much like this meeting. But we're not sure what that number's gonna come in at yet either, so all those things will solidify as we continue to work through the budget.
Yeah, I mean, I think some guesses as to what some of those are gonna look like, but not, we'll have a much firmer sense of what that looks like in the next couple of days, which will help. I think the other thing I'll share, just to your point about that, one of the things I'd like to do in putting the budget together this year is, is to actually show all the lines. So we'll do the summary, because that's easy to have a conversation at the, sort of at the table, but as far as actually the budget book, my intention is to have sort of all the lines, you know, that are active, showing and with their history, so you can kind of see trends, whether it be an individual line or a group of lines. We'll put a little bit of graphics with some of that, just to sort of see those things, but I think that's helpful, because there are certain lines that it's sort of obvious exactly either who or what that is, and then there's others where it's a collection of people, so it's a little less personal that way, but it's all public information, so we can't be too precious about our specifics sometimes. But I think getting that out there also is helpful to see those trends and what's changing.
I think it is helpful though, Doug, that in the summary sheets, like if there are individual items that are major change players,
Yeah.
like, you know, like, even on the summary sheet, I would probably have the health insurance out as a supplement line, because it's a major player. Right now, you know, we're like, well, the district office, expenses up 5.22%. Did John get a new desk? You know, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and that's, right, that's not the case, right? Because it's lumped in under.
Yeah, I started getting soda.
Wait.
Yes.
I was informed,
Yes.
leftover from a
Leftover.
party, not purchased from a meeting. Nah. So, but yeah, so to pull out the major budget, because I think most of the people involved know the major players and how they drive the budget up every year, but I think it's always good to say it, you know,
Yeah.
put it out there, because there'll be new people in the audience too.
Yes.
Not so long ago, I was new, and other people were new, and so.
Doug, is this document here public?
I will put this.
It is now.
We're
Yeah,
live
well, it is
streaming.
now, but I will put this into the folder for the meeting, and we can put it onto the website as an initial document if you want.
Yeah, if you could, if it's public document, then could you just email it to me?
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. The whole thing, I want to
Yeah,
be able
you
to
know, it's in
to
general.
really dive deep into.
Yeah, no, I can see the whole thing.
I don't know that it needs to go on the website.
No, it is a working document.
Yeah,
I would not put the,
but I want to make sure that I can accept it as an email without violating any.
You're on the subcommittee, you can, but you wouldn't give it to anybody, because it's a working document.
I know.
You have people saying,
Yep.
So on the next,
trust me.
I know.
on the
No,
next,
I want it for myself.
just to clarify, the next version will take out insurance costs as a separate line item, which will
in
then
any other
make
line item that you
district-wide
think is
lower.
significant, that will make district-wide lower. Excellent. It might be a drop cost.
The other thing, I mean, I guess along those lines, I would just point out is we are trying to represent special education costs to their individual cost centers more accurately in this version of the budget. So you'll see some things in here that maybe sort of anomalies because of that. If you look at the total student services budget right now in this version, it's up 1.11%. But when you look at some of the building-based budgets, you see some that are close to an excess of 10%. A lot of that is because special ed personnel costs or contracted service costs that were being held in the special ed or the student services cost center are now being reported to the buildings where the work is actually taking place.
And how
So the
prefers us
student
to
services number are not all of our student services, it's only district-wide?
It's this, yeah, it's the centralized expenses, I guess would be the way to put it, whereas, you know, the state, in how it wants us to report to them how we spend, things that are done at this, you know, at the school level want to be reported at the school level, so that's part of the shift. Which is again part of why you see those school expense lines jumping a bit more percentage-wise than the student services.
So in prior years, for example, we have a BCBA who's contracted through the Student Services Department, they do the contract. And it's been reported in Student Services, but now we know if a BCBA is working 100% of their time in Green Meadows, we're reporting the cost of Green Meadows instead of in Student Services.
Did you convert all the previous year's numbers in
Yes.
that way? So that it's still
Well-
apples to apples, or?
No, the spending in the previous years is how it's sort of in the
is how it
books.
was previously
Right.
reported. So
Right.
these, so
Which
like
is-
the 10% increase at WMS, there may be no increase in costs at WMS, but you added costs that were previously under student services
Right,
to the WMS lines, and that line appears higher.
right.
Yet, of course, the student services line didn't go down. But
Can you just show us an example on here, like pick a school, Mile Tree, or maybe Wilbraham Middle School, and just show us where that cost is in this,
Sure.
or Mile Tree, perfect.
Actually, ironically, right there, where that's highlighted, is, so, this is the, contracted services line for staff that we are, currently contracting out with. In the past, it would have been up here, however, these lines, which are about staffing pay, were clustered together under student services. So in this section, the student services section, it would have stuck them in here. And it generically kind of clustered all of those together, instead of reporting it out at the building level. So even though the actual accounting line for this one, so that O2 represents Mile Tree building, right in the middle. Even though that said O2, we in practice had put those expenses in that student services cluster. And part of that, I think, is that when you have staff yourself, you use them where they're needed. So the FTE is a little fluid. So like you may start the year and you need 0.4 at Mile Tree, but then this time of the year, by nature of what kids' needs are, it may drop to 0.3 and it's 0.7 someplace else. And so if you put it in the district, it just sort of holds it all together. There's good and bad about that. Similarly, that can happen with regard to the contracted services as well. But again, I think that we should, at least initially start, where we think we're going to spend it, what building we think we're going to spend it in. This is based on current student need in that regard. But you'll notice, even just the difference between, 48,000 and 130,000 is a pretty sizable jump.
so what are the student services costs that are not assigned to a building? Because it's still I would think that all of the student services costs would be assigned to a building then.
No, so for example, well, their cost of the administration of student services has to be kept separate. And then I believe all of the out-of-district placements are assigned to student services rather than to individual buildings because the students are not in those buildings. And that's a big part of it. And then the transportation of students for out-of-district placements also would be in there.
But you still have some teaching positions where, the need moves so much that it's not tied to the specific building. So we have ESL, or English learner teachers, and staff. Those we hold centrally still, and again, oftentimes because of the variability of that need and its change over the course of the year, it's not, it's difficult to tie it to one building in particular for budgeting purposes. But this is the student services, so you can see, there's some district-wide things around, occupational and physical therapy, therapists, speech and language folks are done at the building level. Pretty much that's a level need that's high enough and consistent enough that we can hold it there.
Line 56, is that the new position that we just approved?
No, that's a para, or would be a para that might be, sort of floating. And that's a little bit of a contingency right at the moment, so that may disappear. Let me think if I can. The new position is actually in that nicely highlighted line right there. And part of why I highlighted that is this may include more than we really should in that line. I think that having that person in that line is perfectly fine. But we also have our student services director in that line, which may not be exactly where that needs to be. So we may, you may see more lines show up over time a little bit as we create some new ones and more carefully refine some of the structure of the budget. But they're in that, that's part of why that line jumped so significantly from 138 to 235, is there's a whole other salary that wasn't in there for one that is now. Anything else to point out on this? And again, a lot of these, you'll notice a lot of these expenses, are sitting exactly the same. But, I'm in the process of reviewing those to see if we've got the resources in the right places and the right amounts, positive or negative. There's certainly some that we have at times held, and I think what we used to do and what we do now has changed, and so we don't need the resource there, but we do need it other places. So try to move those things around, but also to if we can economize and shrink, then that gives us resources to use where we don't have that luxury.
I would just be careful as you're moving things around on lines, particularly lines that you're going to show in the public meetings. It should not be possible to extrapolate what we present here, what a certain individual person is getting paid, right?
Well,
that could be identified.
They're all public.
And if you look at the sort of line by line part, there are certain lines that are a little more clear as to who's in there. But that is all public record, so people could request it even if we don't give it to them. We don't put their name on it.
For a certain person's
Yeah.
salary.
Yes. And it's public.
Okay.
What we don't want public is like any of the, for instance, like out of placement districts, you don't want to be able to apply to know.
Right,
That's
kids,
that's different than what we do at the hospital.
confidentiality
Yeah.
and stuff.
It's very different than what we do at the hospital. They don't want, what anybody else is making.
We're transparent here.
So the other thing I'll mention, it's on here, and I will stress even more for the operating and debt part of the budget, is the capital numbers that we have on there. I did give you a handout on capital items that we have currently. So there should be, it's really sort of 4 pages.
Patrick, I sent you the 3 that involve Wilbraham and the regional school.
What's that?
I sent Patrick the 3 that are.
Okay. So on the front of the first page, I hope it's all right if I just sort of transition to capital, just to talk through this a little bit.
I think that's,
Is that all right?
yeah, I think that's
Okay.
fine.
So what I've done here is, we laid out last year a 10-year capital plan. I've gone back through that with staff, try to get any new projects on, modify things, adjust things. But a couple other things that I did this year was to add things where we have, or identify where we have other sources of support. So things that are in kind of that bright green, it's a little easier to see online than it is to see on the printed sheet, but things with a dark green background have some MSBA support. It's a sort of teal blue, we're going to look to try to tap into Community Preservation Act funds. If it's a sort of purple, E-rate, which is a support for technology updates and infrastructure that we can tap into to help us out. Are projects that are highlighted in a kind of a purple color, kind of a
It's
orangey
not
red.
on the top.
No, it's not on
It's
those.
not up on.
No, I'm just reading it. I'm just-
You know, I kind of generically lumped all sorts of other, grants and gifts, I should say, and gifts.
I think Patrick has
Go
a
ahead,
question.
Patrick.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
On the Minnetonka Regional one, can you change the terminology, please, on the collection of spectator benches that surround the field? So
What?
I would encourage you not to use the term stadium. And instead, no, this is quite serious, right?
No, there's a reason.
No, he's right.
We got it from the state last year that they do believe that there is no differentiation between an athlete or a participant and a spectator, and that they approved benches on other projects in Wilbraham. And so all this is it's a collection of benches. A stadium is the physical structure, but it's not the collection of benches. So I would just encourage us to refer to it differently, that this is not a stadium request, and that should be eligible as well for CPA funding.
No, it's a word that can get you
It's
funded.
that we got from the state this past year.
It's a word, making it a collection of benches. You can use CPA funds.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Stadium is the
Stadium,
word
stadium you
that
can't.
would get us in trouble.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
then you
We
go
would
out.
lose funding because
Yeah.
of stadium, but if we just said collection of benches or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm happy to change the name on that. The thing I would indicate though, the other, so that's in that sort of orangey kind of color, which is sort of grants and gifts, so yes, CPA might be a funding source for that, but also, boosters may wanna help us out, there might be ADA grant funds that we might put in there, and what level of support that might be, I don't know, but, I wanted to highlight, we might be able to get some support to help that project, likewise with the field itself, that's a different, that one definitely doesn't qualify for CPA, but there might be others that would help us out. We have a facility revolving fund when we rent, our facility for use. We can use that for things that support our operations, and so we're gonna, you saw that on the operating side with some supports to the budget. I think there's also some small scale capital type projects that we'll do as well. So those are kind of in the like yellow color, and then in the sort of magenta is food service. So food service revolving fund can support some of its projects. So when we need to redo the floor in the kitchen, they can support that, or if we need to buy, a walk-in freezer for those. So you see that. So part of the reason for that is to give a sort of total picture of capital, separate from just the things we're asking from the towns, but also to show in the places where we are asking from the towns, for support, that we're trying to find other sources to help us as we go along. So I think.
Do you know, will CPA funds cannot be used for turf, correct?
Patrick, they can't be used for turf, right?
Correct.
You cannot use it to buy the rug, and they've also just modified what you can use it for from an engineering standpoint. So there may be a portion of that would qualify. I would be shocked if any of it does though.
Yeah.
If it was to be a small part of engineering, the engineer has already been done.
Yeah.
So realistically, I would think that whole, 1.2 million, whatever it is, we'd come up with that on our own.
So strategically, and we would need to approach the boosters, but if the boosters were able to help with anything strategically, we would probably want them to save what they could help with for when the turf needs to be replaced. If we're able to use CPA funds for the collection of para turf benches.
The other thing, Mike, right, and maybe there's enough time, right, it's shocking that one of the categories for CPA is recreation. And I think anyone that goes by any of these turf facilities will tell you they are used very heavily. And so work with the legislators who change the CPA and ensure that the replacement rugs are eligible for CPA funding. And if we look at the number of communities that have many of these are hitting that replacement life.
Yes.
So I'd like to think that there should be relatively widespread support for ensuring that you can use CPA funds on replacing the rug itself. So that might be another approach, is work the legislators to get a change so that it's then eligible for it.
That's a great point, Patrick. I wish I knew about it before the Democrats' Christmas party, because Wilbraham was there.
Never question our people.
Oh, we do? All right, so we need to, can we put that in the notes, John and Doug, so we don't forget to bring that up at the budget roundtable? That us and other school districts are probably gonna be looking for help, so.
I can say, I did look up CPA and stadiums, and there's a coalition that all the towns sort of connect with to sort of answer some of these questions and nuance. When the law was originally put in place, recreation wasn't a part of it. They modified it to add recreation, but it was open space, so the idea was about sort of natural spaces for people to be out and in, which is, I think, why they've always been somewhat hesitant around some of the other questions that have come up around recreation, and I think that there's a, an ongoing effort to expand what recreation means and what CBA can fund, because I think communities are struggling to sort of support these kind of projects, and, without that, that level of support from CPA, but yeah, hopefully they'll open it up a bit.
Another potential avenue is, do you bring it in front of the voters to look at, do we leave CPA? And that way we can use the dollars as we see fit, as opposed to the very minimal amount that we're now getting in matching state funds isn't really worth having handcuffs around the large portion, which is money that we've generated from the taxpayers in our community. I think we might be at a point where we want to have that conversation, especially if we look at the capital needs that we have that are very real. That's potentially an avenue to better fund it, and one could argue, are we seeing the same effectiveness of projects coming through that we once did? I don't know that we are.
So Patrick, what are we approximately as a town, what is Wilbraham approximately as a town paying into CPA annually?
Yeah, the exact numbers off the top of my head I don't have. I believe, and again, this is going off memory, I want to say that we're somewhere around 80% of the dollars are ours, 20% are the state's.
So that's like what they pay out back to us?
So that's the portion that we get in quote-unquote matching funds, which is down significantly from when it was created, but we also see more member communities join. So if you add the two of them up, I don't know that we're going to see a world where we ever really return to what those levels were based off of the past years of funding history. Or again, maybe it's a legislature change to allow us to at least control our own destiny with the portion that are our dollars. But if we're getting $200,000 from the state in matching dollars, handcuff us with those 200, but don't handcuff us with our 800.
Yeah.
I mean, the other option would be for them to change the revenue source on the state side, which currently is about transaction fees on deeds, so it depends upon how much churn there is in properties over the course of the state. So if real estate's active, then it generates more fees and there's more money for them to dole out, and if there's not, then there isn't. So they may want to look at other sources to support the CPA as
Quarter of a percent?
What's that?
It's a quarter of a percent of CPA under taxable, right?
It depends on the town. It can be anywhere, it can be up to 3%, but it depends on.
I think it's a quarter of a percent, which is $150,000. Just if they match 20%, then that was $172,000.
Yeah.
For us.
Yeah.
A year. But that's not the problem. The problem is that they're sitting on a bunch of money too.
Could be.
So they're overfunded and underspent.
Not in the project, so if we
Right.
Find a project that takes them.
Benches. Benches. We need a lot of benches.
So just to this series of sheets,
Exercise
I'll walk you through really quickly,
If you put a bench next to a sidewalk, then you get the sidewalk. Great, because I know you guys have been working on the sidewalks. I think a lot of people appreciate it.
I think that a lot of the estimates for these different projects are in good shape. There are some that still need some more work and some more updating, so I will, suggest to you that those things will change as we go through and work through this. And things will get moved out a little bit. I mean, I think we're as much as we try to put things, in years where we need them, we also recognize that, there's funding levels that can't be met. So we'll continue to sort of work through which projects, are more urgently needed in the coming year versus can be pushed out. We did a little bit of that, we'll do some more of that. I think as we look at, Hammond's only got really 2 sets of flooring. The transfer switch is an electrical, issue at the school. Currently, if we switch to our generator, we can't switch back. That's the transfer switch that's not working, so they actually have to call the electrician, put on a, sort of giant suit. Non-conductive suit to basically re-switch it back. So that switch, and at some point that'll fail to a point where even that won't work, so that's part of why that project's.
Which building is this?
It's Green Meadows.
Green Meadows.
I'm gonna ask a super question, how many times have you used the generator Green Meadows?
We used it once already this year. I don't know, it's probably once or twice a year, I would
Yeah.
guess it kicks on.
But basically, whenever the power goes out, it goes on.
Right. Yeah.
So think about how many times the power goes out of your home.
I bought a generator and I haven't used it yet.
Really?
Really?
Yes.
Good for you.
No, it's, yeah, no. Not once.
Maybe that's the key.
I use mine 4 times a year, 5 times something.
It's
I mean,
expensive
it's,
for 4 times zero.
No, it's an inverter.
Oh, so I
And,
did the whole generator.
Yeah, a gallon and a half runs my house
Thank you
straight
for
out.
investing in that. I've noticed there's been less power failures.
Can I ask a quick question?
yeah,
Back in the HR, so I noticed just in the lower section, the pool. So I see the pool filter replacement
Yep.
and the timing scoreboard.
yeah.
Those are the only things that would need repair? What about, is there anything else?
In the pool? The pool, sort of timer and scoreboard, or I think it should be timer, not timing, but anyway, I need to learn more about that project, so whether it's urgent enough to be next year or it can be pushed out. It's been on the list a little while, but there's
What
been
about
some
anything
stuff.
about the deck or like piping?
I think that stuff's okay. When we do the filter replacement, and again, we're gonna use some of that revolving fund for that one. That one we've held off. We originally thought it was gonna be a 45, but they got a more recent quote in the last couple months. So it's gonna be a little more expensive. If there are other issues, those will surface when that happens. But I think generally it's in okay shape. But there are probably other pool projects that will go onto the list as we go through. I think that you'll see across multiple of these, you'll see some upgrade to lighting. The auditorium lighting at the high school is a more specific project. We do have a quote on that. It's from late 24. So we bumped the number up from what they gave us. That is house lights as well as the stage lights. So it's mostly about the stage lights and control of stage lights, but then also having the central controller also be able to do the house lights there. Most of the other ones you'll see on the list for lighting are about replacing less efficient with more efficient. There are a ton of programs that are out. They're not as good as they used to be, but when you pay your electric bill, a little chunk of it goes to this little fund that then funds things like replacement of lights and that sort of thing. So we're going to work and look at those projects, whether they'll surface as quickly as they're on this or not, or maybe they get kicked out. They're in process now. I think both towns have worked with a company, NV5, I think it is, to look at some energy controls, but also lighting's a piece of that, I believe. And so those are projects that can have an upfront cost. Sometimes that gets mitigated by funding from these programs if possible, but they also have a return in lower electricity costs over time too. So there's a few of those. Those are, you know, some of the ones that need a little more TLC to get a little more specific, and we'll get more information over the next month or so as the consultants are working with both towns, kind of get back to us on some of that.
Is that MR 3201 lighting system update? Is that the line you're talking about? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from the top.
Yes.
That is what we're
Probably.
talking about?
Yeah, lighting system update,
And
which
it
we
is-
estimates you know, further out, but that's the type of thing. So for this building, you know, that lighting update's not as urgent because the building's not as old. You know, if you look at some of the other buildings,
Yeah.
you'll see it a little earlier in the system. And we've done some of that kind of work over time in some of the buildings. You know, but again, sometimes you can do it and then do it again, and again recoup some more energy savings and sometimes improve the quality of light that's in the buildings. But those are needing some more work. I think of things that I want to make sure to mention here. One thing I'll mention on the Wilbraham with the middle school, you'll notice there's a giant cluster of stuff out in what is fiscal 30 or 31. We sort of shoved everything out. And part of that's, you know, based on the feedback. It's a green one. That's the one
We were just on.
right there, that one.
Okay.
Bottom half of that one. So you'll notice there's a bunch of stuff sitting out there in what will be fiscal 31. And there, above that are a few things that are spread over the intervening years. So given the conversations with the select boards in both communities about the status of the middle school being invited into the accelerated repair program for windows and doors, subsequent conversations about potentially going into the core program, which I guess as of today, the applications will be open in early January. We got notice of that. Suggestions that we switch and go to the core program and perhaps rescind our invitation to the accelerated repair. So, you know, if we are successful in getting into the core program, you know, it's likely to be a very deep renovation or a new building, or we'll see. That's part of why you do a feasibility study. But, you know, if we were to get in, you know, that would push off any, you know, deep investment in core systems, which is part of why those things got pushed out. Didn't want to take them off altogether because they're still there and they still need to be done. But the things that are sort of showing above that are some of the more modest things we can do that we feel like will get some return on investment, or have a more urgent need to be repaired in some level. And again, those will also be getting refined over the coming weeks. We're still waiting, like on the asbestos abatement, we have some resource from a prior capital appropriation that we can use to help us out in the shorter term, but we may, you know, I've got a series of $60,000 amounts and $40,000 amounts over a series of years there. That may or may not be what we decide is the right way to go. We're going to get some feedback. There's, you know, we've got a scope of work that's coming from our environmental company that helps us out with this. They also are due this month to do a full asbestos review. So you have an asbestos plan, and every, I believe it's 3 years, you have to renew the plan. This year's the year. That will give us a sense of need and urgency there, and that'll shape and change those numbers probably significantly over the coming years. And again, thinking about, if we're going to do a major renovation or a change in building, how much do we want to do in the immediate? Probably as
And
little
that
as we
money
can.
you have in there
and-
for exterior doors, that's the patch and repair doors that are there?
The exterior doors, yeah, that's the doors that we have, either, you know, it may be replacement of existing doors, and, you know, you'd like to get a good 15 or 20 years out of them, but we may not, the necessity may be high enough that we feel like it has a return of value, both from the standpoint of, you know, air quality and heating and cooling costs, but also just building security, because that's the other thing that happens with doors right now, is that they don't latch as well as they should, so we're not able to secure the building in the way we'd like to a lot of times, and so it may be, you know, sort of in our best interest to make some smaller, modest investments in doors to kind of close over until we get to a little further down the line, but again, I think we're still evaluating exactly what that's gonna look like.
Like you think, it's not enough money to replace all the exterior doors,
Right.
but some of them may be too far gone, is that the
To even patch.
Right,
Yeah.
so, and, you know, just for those who are
So I've
watching,
heard comments from people that have been on tours that they really want to at least see some of the holes, at least covered with a kick plate or something.
right, but, and that may be possible in some cases, but in some cases, you know, the interior that you would adhere the kick plate to is also crumbling, so that's,
Yeah.
that's.
I
how it
get
is.
Dick,
So-
I got a question for you. So
One
the
on each side
total
and you spray the insulation
Wilbraham
foam in
funds
between.
requested, right, is 1.485 million for 2027. Now, on capital amount to be assessed over here, are these two different numbers?
Yeah, because the one on the bottom of that sort of green sheet,
Yeah.
that would
Just
have,
to Wilbraham.
that's town, these are town-owned buildings, so that would be a town capital item, as opposed to, on the other side of that same piece of paper, which is region assessed capital. So that's, what's showing on the board up above, and what's showing at the bottom of that page is those that would be assessed to both communities and split roughly 80-20, but not exactly.
I just wanted to say a little bit more for those who might be watching at home, because we heard from both communities about even if we're invited into the accelerated repair and so into the core program, and even if the decision is to do major construction or new building, at the middle school, they wanted the middle school to be maintained in some of the more pressing issues to be dealt with. So in addition to doors on here, there's HVAC upgrades and new vent replacements for the next 2 years. There's asbestos remediation every single year, as well as sidewalk repairs. So, and interior door hardware, which is something that has been on this list for a long time. The source for that, though, it would be the facility revolving funds.
That's right. That's right. And so I think that, yeah, the key difference is back to your question, which is those that are Wilbraham owned buildings are in that that total of 1.485, which again, like I said, we'll refine that over the coming, that we'll get a little better on some of the estimates. Most of them are in pretty good shape, but some others are needing a little refinement. Also, just sort of the timing of things, we're gonna continue to work on that before we really come to you with that. But that's a direct, wholly Wilbraham appropriation. Likewise, on the blue sheet, the Green Meadow, this is, that list at the bottom is the town attendance for the building that they own. And if we go to that other sheet, then the bottom of that is shared costs that will be assessed to the towns. Again, I think it's early days still. I've spent a fair amount of time with our facilities folks and our IT folks to go through this, but there's still more to be done, and there's some refinement of some estimates that we need to do still, and staging and thinking about some of these projects. I mean, I think the middle school, it's really only been the last week and a half, 2 weeks that we really had deeper conversations, and there's more to be had, with our facilities people, some of the town facilities people, around what it is that we want to do and how we want to approach some of that in the short term as we apply the core program and try to access that larger support for deeper renovation or
Potentially apply to the core program. Still has to be brought up for discussion at the school committee and building. So,
Right.
but we have, when that happens, we have input from the select boards to share with the school committee.
Can I just ask one question on the facility rental fees?
Mm-hmm.
So I know that's paying for a lot of the interior doors, the hardware. I know that's come up over the past few years regarding
Right.
just security and just making sure that you have, one key versus, 30 keys. And so I wondered, so with the money that's collected, it's a pool of money, and then you're just choosing which buildings to do the doors? I'm just wondering, some are being done in 27 and some are done in 28. I just wondered how you determine what buildings are being done when.
It'll really be driven by sort of staff availability to do it mostly.
Oh.
But I did sort of press the point about which buildings would go first from the standpoint of the facilities folks, which is why I think on the middle school it's in the coming year. It has, the other thing that changing this out does is it also makes them handicap accessible, because many of the doors especially in buildings that haven't had them replaced at all are round knobs.
Mm-hmm.
They'll go to a lever type handle. Some have been keyed in part of the way towards a more safe, but not fully, so there's that. And then also creates a sort of unified system of keys, which will also be helpful in the district. So, yeah, and it's one of those that's been there, and it's been, you know, it's been of concern around a safety and accessibility question, and I think it's also one it's a modest sized project, but it's also been challenged to get funded, so that seemed like a reasonable one that would qualify. Now, you know, the thing with the rental fee revolving fund is you have to use the funds for things that support the building. You can't, like, we can't collect rental funds and then buy a bus for the athletics department, right? It's got to be kind of related to the thing. But you know, the doors are you know, something that get utilized. So when we have people use our auditorium, or we have people that use our gyms or our stages or our just classrooms, they're all in those spaces, and they're impacted by the safety or the ability to have them be more safe. So it's, and they have people of varying levels of you know, they have varying levels of accessibility needs. So, you know, it seemed like a reasonable sort of project or set of projects we could chip away at and work on with that funding.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if we just didn't have enough money to do it all in 1 year versus
It's
breaking it up
probably
into
more about just can staff get to all of it
Okay.
in you know, in that time. There is a fair amount of money on hand now, and we could, but I don't think we have the ability for staff to get that all done.
Okay.
So, if I can, because I know we're trying probably to get out of here, but three things that I had. I was wondering if you could, easy one on the capital projects, can you add a line underneath total Wilbraham and then add a line saying plus the regional, so I got confused over the 1.4 plus the 7, so it's actually looking for 2.1.
Right.
So if you could add just a line that says total for the town.
Yeah.
On that would be easy. The second thing is I was hemming and hawing on how to present this, but the facilities budget, the budget for the amount of people you have working in facilities, your HVAC guys, your facilities guys. Would there be an overall savings, or can there be some kind of savings in the towns if the towns took those personnel and put it under the town budget, because it's the town-owned buildings? I'm stretching it here, saying Hamden and Wilbraham, and then Minichog would be like a request to get it done, Hamden and Wilbraham sign off on it now that we both have facilities managers, and we figure out who does the work. The overall thought process on that is Sam and Hamden's guy are now using all third-party people to do HVAC, so if we had them under an umbrella of the town-owned, would we have a savings for the town to have our people do it versus going to a third party?
The HVAC person for.
The HVAC person will have.
Whatever would be for.
Sam could have a schedule for the HVAC person for the week, and it says, go to Mile Tree today, go to the library tomorrow, so.
Sharing resources.
So
Shared
share.
HVAC
Shared
resources.
resources.
Not even HVAC, I'm thinking about
Electrical
Right.
plumbing.
electrical plumbing. If that savings, if there was a delta of savings, then that would help give more money into the, I don't want to take money from the schools.
Right.
The idea is I'm gonna, and I don't want to use personnel, but let's just say you have 50 people, I don't know how much the people are, right? You have 50 people, but the towns think we can get away with it for 47. So then that 3-person savings, plus the savings that we're gonna save the town by not having to go to a third party, would be money that we could give back to the school budget.
Right.
the idea is just an idea, it's just a concept, I'm not, like, and it's probably, I don't know, it's probably a very deep dive into the cost of everything.
I was about to use that word.
No,
I think it's a good idea, and maybe something at our next meeting we could discuss. Maybe if on our end, if you can prepare a deep dive for a list of how many we have of the different people and where they're currently working, and anything that we're going to third party for repairs. And then on the Wilbraham town end, if you could do the same deep dive before our next meeting, have a list of all the people you have, where is their time being spent, and a list of the types of jobs that are being sent
We
out
have
to
no
third
one.
party.
It's Sam, and it's a bunch of volunteers. To be honest with you, it's.
All right, your homework is easier than
Yeah,
Doug's.
so, no, we have Sam, we have a bunch of volunteers that do work-offs, we have a guy that helps out with the janitorial stuff for the library, we have stuff like that. The idea is what would we save, if I had a list of like, you have 2 electricians, you have that, if I can go give that to Sam and say, if we had this as a part of the town budget, and it would be like, the simple part would be for year 1, take it off and put it in the town budget, it lowers the school budget. And then year 2 is we've saved $200,000, give that back, or come up with a number that we give back, that kind of a thing, to help get to some money. So what it wouldn't eliminate positions, because it's, I'm not like going and saying,
No, I'm
eliminate
wondering
all
if,
your positions, because it
listening
would.
to you, and like if our people are working all day long every day, then it might mean adding positions to the overall pool. Because you know what I mean, whereas if there are school maintenance people that have some flex time in their day where they could be working on town jobs, well, I mean, if they were under the town umbrella, you know what I mean, then they might, maybe the town wouldn't need to hire anyone else. But we need to
Well, we hired a third-party company right now to put all these electric crosswalks in. So if we, and they don't need to be done today, but if they were able to be done over a period of time, maybe we didn't need to hire a third-party person to put in the electric crosswalk.
Right.
It's that idea, it's that,
Yeah.
I wanna make sure everybody understands.
question
I take
is-
fire everywhere.
The question is, what available man hours are there from people that are already working between the town and the school that could be flexed, and then,
If I could offer a different idea that I think might be more efficient, if it was something that the towns and the school committee were interested in doing, it might make more sense to just direct the administration of the towns and the school district to work together to see if there was some kind of shared services model that would make sense, because I think we're all at individual meetings gonna have just tiny little bits of information and wouldn't be able to put it together like the administration of the 3 entities could.
I know it was floated publicly in the, sorry. I know it was floated publicly at the select level in this town. So I said I would bring it up today, because maybe if we can do some preliminary work, and then they go, yes, or we'll take it over and then take it over. Because I don't want it, we don't want them to start, I don't want to say negotiating, because you don't know if it's viable. Right. Even negotiate. And if we're talking, it's, because your facilities line on your budget is only $1 million. If it's not only $1 million savings, it's not that much of a savings. What we should do is just have Sam work with you when he goes to a third party and pay you the third party.
And you only have one person, so
We only have one
savings
person.
on your side is limited.
And his budget's like, I want to say his budget's like $100,000 to do odd projects, sorry. To do odd projects around town, so so yes, so I think it's a number that can be worked out.
Well, there's also, even if, I think the other consideration would be is that, even if we don't have a staff person, so let's say, for example, we don't have an electrician, the town doesn't have one either, but we could collectively, request proposals for providing a service, right? And maybe get a better price for that third party to come and do the work
Right,
too. So
yeah.
there's that kind of thing as well that could be possible as part and parcel is even if we don't have in-house staff that do some of those highly skilled jobs, there might be ways for us to be cooperative in our purchasing to guarantee a certain level of work and therefore, benefit the town because the third-party cost is 75% of what it normally would be. That's still helpful to do.
So that was one thought.
Would we have any union agreement in place that we would need to have to do some impact bargaining on for something like this?
Probably.
Would we have volunteers from the town of Wilbraham taking over and doing some things at the schools that we have
Weeds.
professionals?
Sorry to
doing
say
now?
that way, but weeds. Let's see if the money's worth it first.
Yeah.
Because you may have a union issue, but we're gonna need to hire people anyway, so maybe it's not gonna be an issue. So I don't wanna get in, I don't wanna get too deep into it, it's a high level thought if I could. Second thing is we started having liaison meetings with our departments, and one of the questions that came up is a $25,000 charge to Parks and Rec for a janitor to be present at all times now during weekend hours. The thought process is why the sudden change in allowing someone to just open and close, and then there would be no offset because you're still requiring the Recs supervisor to be on site the whole time too, so there will be no off charges, and that would add $100, roughly $100 per child to the cost to use Parks and Rec. So a lot of unbagging there. If we can talk about that next time, because it's a slippery slope, because we let the school teams use Memorial, the wrestling team itself. We don't charge for that. We don't, you know, are we charging, I fully agree with charging Wilbraham Munson to use our schools. I fully agree with charging even suburban leagues, private teams. But I think we should still support the Parks and Rec, because if I have to increase the Parks and Rec's budget by $25,000, because we can't have kids being paid $250 to play, you know, an 8th grader to play basketball. So if I have to increase their budget, I gotta get it from somewhere else. So I just wanna float that idea, you know, I don't wanna surprise you with it, and then, you know, we don't need to talk about it this time, but if we could talk about it in the next week.
It's like we're close to the end.
Oh, there's one other thing, that hasn't been
Concerned
mentioned.
No one from ambulance advisory this year.
Maybe the
I reached out to Doug, he did
That
not
is-
reply.
Same. That's,
I
related.
have 5 people on,
Oh,
could be.
Could be
Yeah.
anything. So I just wanted to say that we did take a look at enrollments this year, and it looks like assessments will continue to shift towards Hamden for a second year in a row. Looks like they'll pick up an additional %.
I noticed
More or
that
less.
in the, I think the percentages.
So that's,
Is that 79, 21?
I think you may be right.
And I don't care about the dot. 79.12.
Yeah, 79.21.
My personal view on that is that will continue to go, they have had more new homes in Hamden than they have in Wilbraham. It will continue to go that way.
It's also, population's very different, so things are beginning to turn over, so.
Yeah.
If you look at over the course of the year, how many houses are for sale in Hamden, it's not that many, so.
that's good, right? Or not good?
Yeah, no, it's, people enjoy living there. It's every day.
Yeah, but if there's more,
Sorry, I have to say it.
What are you saying, people are staking
You
out
know,
houses?
sales means new families moving in.
You gotta look at, if you have a chance, do a Zillow demographics on the two different towns. There's a strong, I believe their average age in Hamden is 5 years older than the average age in Wilbraham.
Which is young.
Which is incorrect.
I believe it's 5863, and don't,
If you read the government study committee report from last year, you could get some details on the demographics of the town.
So I will
All
just
right.
say, any questions anybody has, please feel free to reach out to me. You know, like I said, we're still fairly early in the process, gonna continue to update and refine the numbers, especially in capital. I think it's got a lot more work to do there. In the operating budget, we'll continue to refine and, you know, we're really more waiting on information from various, you know, pieces of the puzzle, whether it be state support or our insurance, or contracts, or, you know, whatever, but, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll keep refining these and trying to, you know, work with towns to get to numbers that work with what you have available. You know,
Good choice.
All right, so right now, our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, January 20th at 5 PM. Unless anybody wants to bring up, unless anyone thinks we need to meet sooner than that. But I think that was already expressed, we're waiting on information, but it looks like we have our books together as best as they can be right now, so. And then we also have another meeting scheduled for February 23rd at 5 PM also. Does anybody have any topics that they'd like to see added on, in addition to what we discussed from Todd's questions for our next meeting?
Yeah, I'm sure we will as time goes on, and I'll just send them to you. if I-
Oh, yeah, of course. Of course. It's fine.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
I think they would say the time.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:28 PM and 10 seconds.
All right.
And we are no longer live.
Okay.
Other.
do you want just hard copy, or, I mean, like a PDF of what we have?